But when it resurfaced, it stunned the entire coin world. A tiny 1956 D Lincoln wheat penny, worth up to $1.4 million. A penny made almost 70 years ago, struck in Denver, quietly sitting in someone's pocket change, now worth more than most people's houses. But that's exactly what makes this story so incredible, because this little copper coin hides one of the most astonishing secrets in U.S. coin history. The year was 1956. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, Elvis Presley ruled the airwaves, and America was booming. Pennies were everywhere, kids collected them, stores gave them as change, and nobody looked twice at the tiny D mint mark below the date. But in the busy halls of the Denver Mint, something happened, a mistake so small it went unnoticed by nearly everyone. Coins began leaving the presses with minute imperfections. Doubling on the date, faint repunches on the D, and strange die cracks that made some coins look slightly off. These weren't major errors to the naked eye, but to trained collectors decades later, they were golden clues. Each one pointed to a rare minting anomaly that would eventually send collectors into a frenzy. But what makes the 1956 D penny so valuable isn't just its age, its rarity in perfection. Most of these coins were spent, scratched, or corroded over time. But a handful, perhaps fewer than a dozen, survived in pristine, brilliant condition, still shining as they did the day they left the mint. Those few coins, struck with perfect clarity and microscopic doubling, are the ones fetching jaw-dropping prices today. A man in Colorado discovered a 1956 D penny while searching through his late father's coin jars. It looked ordinary, until he noticed something odd. The D mint mark seemed to be punched twice. He sent it off to be graded, expecting maybe a few $100. When the results came back, experts were speechless. It was one of the finest examples ever found, with a rare double die obverse and flawless luster. When it hit the auction block, the final bid climbed past $1 million, but that wasn't an isolated case. Another 1956 D penny in near-perfect condition shocked bidders when it reached a hammer price of over $1.4 million. Collectors couldn't believe it. Dealers scrambled to check their inventory. Everyday people began digging through jars, wondering if they too had been sitting on a fortune. And here's where the mystery deepens. Not every 1956 D penny is worth millions, most are still worth a cent. But certain variations, those with visible doubling on the date, and overpunched D, or a flawless red luster, can transform from pocket change into treasure. Start with the D mint mark. On the rarest examples, it appears doubled or slightly misplaced, almost like a shadow behind the letter. Under magnification, you might see a faint outline of the original mint mark. Then check the date, particularly the 9 and 6. Some show traces of doubling there too. Finally, examine the coin's surface. The more brilliant red and untouched it looks, the more valuable it becomes. Still, the best part of this story isn't just the price, it's the thrill of discovery. Imagine pulling a penny from your old coffee can, turning it over, and realizing it could change your life. That's what happened to one lucky collector who didn't even know he had a rare coin until a friend pointed out the unusual mint mark. That penny paid off his mortgage. But what makes the 1956 D so captivating is its blend of beauty, history, and mystery. It's a piece of mid-century America, struck in a time when the country was filled with optimism, yet hiding one of the most overlooked treasures of modern coinage. Collectors describe finding one as a $1 million miracle. Dealers say the value could climb even higher as fewer mint-state examples surface. And every year, the legend of the 1956 D grows, fueled by whispers of another record-breaking auction just around the corner. Because most of these coins vanished into circulation decades ago. They bought candy bars, paid bus fares, and jingled in lunch boxes, until time and wear erased the signs of their rarity. Only the sharp-eyed, the patient, and the lucky ever find one that survived in perfect form. The same minting mistake that made some coins rare also produced subtle differences that went unnoticed for decades. Many 1956 D pennies look completely normal, until you magnify them. That's when the secrets appear. Collectors now hunt these coins relentlessly, scouring estate sales, flea markets, and forgotten coin albums. Stories keep surfacing. A penny found in an attic drawer, another in an old coin roll, one discovered by a teenager sorting through change for fun. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. A new batch of high-grade 1950-60 pennies surfaced at a small auction house in the Midwest. Experts authenticated them, confirming their mint-state brilliance and rare doubled features. Within hours, bidding went wild. The top coin fetched over $1 million, again, proving lightning can strike twice. How many are still out there, hiding in plain sight? Could your next handful of change hold one of these incredible coins? Here's how you can find out. Grab a magnifying glass and look closely at any 1956 penny you find. If it has a D mint mark below the date, you're off to a good start. Examine the details. Look for doubling, crisp edges, and a bright copper-red surface. If the coin looks unusually sharp or flawless, it might be worth sending to a grading service like PCGS or NGC. Because if you're lucky enough to have one of the rare 1950-60 doubled die or repunched mint mark pennies, you could be holding something worth well over $1 million. And remember, these treasures aren't locked away in museums. They're out there, waiting in jars, drawers, and piggy banks, quietly holding a fortune in plain sight. So before you spend your next penny, look twice. Because this exact coin, a 1950-60 Lincoln Wheat penny, could be the one that changes everything. It was just an ordinary morning in Denver, 1954. The U.S. Mint buzzed with the rhythm of machinery pressing millions of Lincoln Wheat pennies, tiny copper coins meant to jingle through everyday America. No one could have guessed that hidden among those countless coins, one particular penny would one day be worth a staggering $1.50 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but sold for nearly $1 million. The 1954 D Lincoln Wheat penny. A coin so common, so ordinary looking, that most people wouldn't give it a second glance. Yet beneath its humble copper shine lies one of the most mysterious minting stories in U.S. history. Collectors call it the sleeper. A coin that hid in plain sight for decades, until one man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. The story begins in Denver, at the height of the post-war boom. The mint was rushing to produce coins for a growing nation, and mistakes were inevitable. Double strikes, off-center impressions, and even rare die variations slipped through unnoticed. But the 1954 D Wheat penny had something different. Something almost too perfect to be a mistake, and too strange to ignore. One rumor claims that a small batch of 1954 D pennies was struck on leftover planchets, thin metal blanks meant for coins from other years, or even other denominations. Others say that a mint employee noticed a flaw in the die, a barely visible doubling in Lincoln's profile, and quietly swapped the die before it could be destroyed. Either way, the result was a handful of coins unlike any others ever made. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. For years, these rare 1954 D Wheat pennies circulated just like any other. They paid for gas, candy, newspapers. No one knew they were passing around a piece of treasure worth over $1 million. Then, decades later, a collector in California stumbled upon one while sorting through an old coffee can full of pennies. He almost tossed it aside, until a faint doubling on the word, Liberty, caught his eye. He took it to an appraiser. The expert squinted, pulled out his loupe, and fell silent. After a long moment, he whispered, "You might want to sit down for this." That penny, dusty and dull from age, turned out to be one of the finest known 1954 D mint-era coins ever discovered. It was later auctioned for an eye-popping price, nearly $1.50 million. Dealers were shocked. Collectors were racing to check their old jars and drawers. The coin world had a new legend, but here's where the story gets even more unbelievable. Some experts believe there could still be more of these coins out there, sitting unnoticed in collections, hiding in penny rolls, or tucked away in your grandparents' change jar. That's right. You could be holding one right now without even knowing it. So, what exactly makes the 1954 D Wheat penny worth such a fortune? It's not just age. It's rarity, condition, and most importantly, error. The D mint mark, located just below the date, is the key. On these valuable coins, it may appear slightly misplaced, doubled, or unusually faint. Under magnification, look for subtle doubling on Lincoln's ear, the date, or the word Liberty. These are the clues collectors hunt for, the details that can turn a 1-cent coin into a $1 million masterpiece. Not every 1954 penny with doubling is genuine. Many are simply worn or damaged. That's why authentication is critical. Send it to a trusted grading service like PCGS or NGC. If it's verified as one of the ultra-rare error strikes, congratulations. You're sitting on a coin worth more than most people's cars, maybe even their homes. One man found his while cleaning out his late father's desk drawer. Another discovered his inside an old coin album from a yard sale. These aren't fairy tales. They're real stories of everyday people who stumbled into fortune, and the emotional pull behind it is irresistible. Imagine finding something so small, so forgotten, that suddenly changes your life forever. A penny, just a penny, worth over $1 million. This tiny piece of copper tells the story of America's craftsmanship, its mistakes, and its miracles. Each wheat penny carries history, the face of Lincoln on one side, and on the other, the words, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. But among those many, one coin stands alone. Still, there's more. Some collectors whisper about the mirror finish versions of the 1954 penny, proof-like strikes created when new dies were polished to perfection. Only a handful are believed to exist. Their surfaces shine with a reflective glow unlike any other coin from that year. If you ever find a 1954 penny that looks unusually glossy, don't dismiss it. That reflection could be worth a small fortune. And then there's the legend of the copper transition error. A rumor suggests that a few 1954 pennies were struck on planchets meant for foreign coins, slightly different in composition, slightly lighter in weight. These anomalies, if verified, could easily break the $1 million mark again. But here's the part most people miss, and it's what separates the dreamers from the discoverers. The most valuable coins aren't always the ones that look the nicest. Sometimes, it's the subtle imperfection, the tiny minting flaw, that makes all the difference. So next time you're rolling pennies or sorting through old change, stop for a second. Look closer. The D might be slightly off-center. The lines on Lincoln's coat might show a faint double image. The coin might just feel a little different in your hand, because somewhere out there, another 1954 wheat penny is waiting to be found, and when it is, it could easily fetch another $1 million. Collectors around the world are on the hunt. Coin forums are buzzing. Dealers are offering huge premiums just for the chance to inspect one. And the excitement keeps growing, because stories like this remind us all of one simple truth: treasure doesn't always come in gold or jewels. Sometimes, it comes in copper. So, if you have a 1954 Lincoln wheat penny sitting in a jar, take a second look. Check the details. You never know, that old coin could be the key to a life-changing discovery. In the world of coins, history isn't just written on paper. It's pressed in metal, waiting for someone like you to uncover it. But one collector's sharp eyes turned it into a life-changing discovery. A 1958 no-mint Mark Lincoln wheat penny worth up to $1.6 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single penny that could buy you a house, a car, and still leave enough for a dream vacation. But how did an ordinary-looking coin become one of the most valuable pieces in American history? The story behind it is stranger than fiction. It was the final year of the wheat reverse design, a design that had been used since 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's centennial. By 1958, the U.S. Mint was preparing to shift to the Lincoln Memorial design, which would debut the following year. That transition, as simple as it sounded, came with chaos, misprints, and human error, the kind that would forever change the fate of a few small copper coins. But what happened inside the mint that year stunned even the most seasoned collectors. Somewhere between the routine production of hundreds of millions of pennies, a few coins were struck using an incorrect die combination, a double die obverse so dramatic that the word, Liberty, and the date, 1958, appear doubled, crisp, and clear to the naked eye. It wasn't supposed to exist. But it did. and only 3 authentic examples have ever been confirmed. Imagine holding one of those in your hand, a coin so rare, even professional graders had to look twice before believing what they saw. One of these pennies went under the hammer and sold for over $1 million, shaking the entire coin community to its core. Collectors were stunned. Dealers couldn't believe their eyes. A coin that most people would overlook, tossed into a jar or left in a drawer, was now a piece of American treasure. But the story doesn't end there. For decades, whispers circulated among coin enthusiasts, rumors of more 1958 double-die pennies hidden away in old collections, waiting to be found. Many searched through their change, guided by little more than hope and a magnifying glass. One man in particular, a lifelong collector from Illinois, shared his story. He had almost spent the coin at a gas station before noticing the doubling under a fluorescent light. He sent it for grading, and when it came back confirmed as authentic, his life changed overnight. But what makes this coin truly legendary isn't just the doubling, it's the mystery. The mint never officially admitted how or why it happened. Some experts believe it was the result of a master die accidentally used for a test strike. Others think it might have been the work of a mint employee experimenting during the transition period before the Lincoln Memorial cent began production. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain: this wasn't just a minting error. It was a historical accident that created a fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When word spread that a 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny had sold for 6 figures, the frenzy began. People started digging through their penny jars, coin rolls, and old boxes in attics. Coin shows across the country buzzed with talk about the $1 million penny. Dealers began offering cash just to inspect people's collections. Even the U.S. Mint archives were combed for records, but none could explain the mysterious survival of these coins. Collectors described it as lightning trapped in copper, a perfect storm of timing, transition, and pure chance. The very last year of the wheat reverse, combined with a minting blunder that should never have happened, created a coin so rare that even experts have called it the holy grail of Lincoln cents. Think about it, billions of pennies have been minted since 1909. Most are worth face value. A few rare varieties fetch a few hundred or a few thousand. But this one? Up to $1.6 million for a single cent. That's not just rare, that's once in a lifetime. Now, let's talk about what makes this coin stand out, and how you can identify it if you ever stumble across one. First, check the obverse, that's the side with Lincoln's portrait. Look closely at the word, Liberty, and the date, 1958. On the genuine double die, both show dramatic, clear doubling visible even without magnification. The letters appear thick, shadowed, almost like they were stamped twice by accident. Next, examine the motto. In God we trust. The doubling is strongest there, bold and unmistakable. Be careful though, countless fakes and altered coins have flooded the market. Many tried to pass off ordinary 1958 pennies as the $1 million variety by engraving or pressing the design. Real experts look for strong, machine doubling that's uniform, not weak or flat. If you think you might have one, never clean it or polish it. Send it directly to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. The difference between a $1 million discovery and a worthless copy often comes down to those few tiny details. They're obsessed. Because the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny represents more than just a coin. It's the thrill of discovery, the dream of finding hidden fortune in plain sight. Imagine finding one in a dusty drawer or a family coin jar that's been sitting untouched for decades. It's happened before. And it could happen again. Every great coin story begins with someone who simply decided to look closer. To take that extra second, to flip a penny over and notice something odd. That's how history is made, not by luck, but by curiosity. Because the truth is, treasures like this aren't always buried in the ground. Sometimes, they're hiding in your own home, quietly waiting for the right eyes to see them. And here's the most exciting part. Most of the 1958 double-die pennies were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, meaning no mint mark. That's right, if yours doesn't have a little D or S under the date, it could be one of these elusive treasures. But don't assume every 1958 penny without a mint mark is valuable. The doubling is the key. No doubling, no fortune. But if that doubling is there, you might just be holding one of the rarest coins ever produced. One collector once said. Finding that penny was like winning the lottery, but with history attached. That's what makes coin collecting magical. Every piece of change holds a story, a secret, a possibility. So the next time you come across an old wheat penny, especially one from 1958, take a closer look. Because this exact penny, the 1958 no mint mark wheat Lincoln cent with dramatic doubling, could be sitting in your drawer right now. And it's worth over $1 million. The story of this penny begins in 1944, a year when America was still at war, factories were roaring day and night, and every scrap of metal mattered. But somewhere, deep inside the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia, something strange happened. A small mistake, a mix-up so rare that only a handful of people in history have ever held one of these coins in their hands. And that mistake would turn an ordinary 1-cent piece into a treasure worth up to $1.7 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it became one of the most valuable Lincoln wheat pennies ever found. In 1944, pennies were supposed to be made of copper once again, after a brief wartime experiment with steel in 1943. The steel cents were made because copper was desperately needed for ammunition and wiring in the war effort. But when production switched back to copper in 1944, a few leftover steel planchets, the small metal discs used to make coins, accidentally made their way back into the presses. The result? A tiny handful of 1944 pennies struck on leftover steel from the year before. At first glance, the coin looked completely normal. Lincoln's familiar face, the "In God We Trust," the date 1944. But here's the twist: there was no mint mark beneath the date. That meant it came from the Philadelphia Mint. And that small absence, that lack of a tiny S or D, would one day separate $1 million fortune from pocket change. For decades, collectors didn't even know these 1944 no mint mark steel pennies existed. They were mistaken for ordinary coins or discarded as curiosities. But then, one day, a teenage boy sorting through his change after mowing lawns found a silvery-looking penny mixed with copper ones. It didn't feel right. It was lighter. He took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's face went pale. What that boy had just handed him was one of the rarest pennies in American history. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. That coin, once worth 1 cent, was sold years later at auction for over $1 million. Collectors were stunned. News outlets couldn't believe it. A penny, a single, ordinary coin most people wouldn't bend down to pick up, had changed someone's life forever. And here's where the story gets even more mysterious. Not all 1944 no mint mark pennies are valuable. In fact, most are worth only a few cents, unless they were made of steel instead of copper. And that's the key. The rare era coins were struck on leftover 1943 steel planchets, giving them a silver-gray color and a magnetic pull. That's right, these 1944 steel pennies stick to a magnet. Imagine that for a moment. A simple refrigerator magnet could reveal $1 million treasure sitting in your change jar. Dealers are still hunting for these coins to this day. Every few years, another one surfaces, in an attic, in an old coin collection, or even in a forgotten coffee can. Each discovery sends waves through the collector community. Because only a few dozen are known to exist, and every new find means another piece of history has been uncovered. But here's the wild part. Even experts can mistake these for something else. Some people try to fake them by plating regular copper pennies in steel or zinc to give them that silvery shine. But genuine 1944 steel pennies are magnetic, weigh about 2.7 grams instead of 3.1, and have that distinctive Philadelphia no mint mark under the date. And yet, despite all the hype, the genuine ones almost always come from ordinary people, folks who weren't even looking. One man found his in an inherited coin jar from his grandfather. Another woman discovered hers while rolling pennies for the bank. They had no idea they were touching a piece of American history worth more than $1.7 million. But what makes this coin so fascinating isn't just its value, it's the mystery behind its creation. Historians still debate exactly how those leftover steel planchets slipped into the presses in 1944. Was it human error? A last-minute production mix-up? Or did a mint worker intentionally strike a few as keepsakes? No one knows for sure. The 1944 no-mint mark steel penny is one of the holy grails of American coin collecting. When one appears at auction, the room goes silent. The bidding starts slow, a few thousand, then tens of thousands, and before long, it's six figures. The energy in the air is electric. And when the final hammer drops, it's often close to or even over $1 million. But here's where it gets even better. Not all 1944 no-mint mark pennies are made of steel. The vast majority are made of copper, but even some of those can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars in pristine condition. Coins that have never been circulated, known as mint state, can fetch small fortunes on their own. Start by checking the date, 1944. If there's no mint mark under the date, that's your first clue it's from Philadelphia. Then, look at the color. A steel penny will have a gray, metallic shine instead of the warm reddish tone of copper. Next, grab a magnet. If it sticks, congratulations, you might just be holding one of the rarest coins in the world. But don't rush to conclusions. Counterfeits are everywhere. Many fake 1944 steel pennies were made from 1943 copper ones with altered dates, or they'd been coated to look silvery. The safest way to know is to have it authenticated by a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC. They'll confirm the metal composition, weight, and authenticity, and if it's real, you'll have proof that your penny could be worth a life-changing amount of money. Stories like these aren't fairy tales. They happen all the time. A coin that's been sitting in a drawer for generations can suddenly rewrite a family's financial future. Collectors were shocked when one of these 1944 no-mint mark steel pennies sold for $1.7 million at auction, and experts believe there could still be a few undiscovered examples floating around out there. Maybe in a coin jar. Maybe in a box of inherited change. Maybe even in your pocket right now. That a tiny piece of metal from 1944, something made during wartime, something almost thrown away, could be the key to a modern-day fortune. So, the next time you find yourself with a handful of old pennies, don't ignore them. Look closely. Test them. Research them. Because that one coin could change everything. And here's the best part. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. The story begins in a dusty old coin jar, the kind that sits forgotten on the back shelf of a garage. A man from Colorado was cleaning out his late father's belongings when he almost tossed out a handful of old wheat pennies. But one coin caught his eye. The date read 1951, and right beneath it, a tiny D glimmered faintly in the light. That single letter would change his life forever. Because what he found wasn't just an old penny. It was $1 million mistake hiding in plain sight. You see, the 1951 D Lincoln Wheat penny is one of those coins that seems ordinary, until you look closer. Struck at the Denver Mint, over 625 million were produced. Most of them ended up rattling in pockets, vending machines, and piggy banks. But among all those billions of brown cents, a few rare errors escaped into the world. And those rare survivors are now worth up to $1.8 million. Collectors were stunned when the first ones surfaced at a private auction. The story spread like wildfire. How could a simple penny from the 1950s, something your grandfather might have used to buy a soda, end up being worth more than a luxury car collection? The answer lies in a mysterious minting error, so subtle that most people miss it even while staring right at it. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Experts discovered that a small batch of 1951 D pennies had been struck using slightly misaligned dies, creating a double image effect on Lincoln's profile and the word Liberty. These double die errors are incredibly rare, and the Denver Mint's 1951 version became one of the hardest to find in the entire wheat penny series. Now here's where the story gets even more unbelievable. One coin, found in near-perfect condition, still showing its original copper-red luster, sold for more than $1.8 million in a private collector deal. And the person who sold it? A regular guy who picked it out of a coin jar. Just imagine, one ordinary day, you're counting pennies for fun, and the next, you're holding a fortune in your palm. Dealers rushed to get their hands on any 1951D they could find, hoping lightning might strike twice. But most were worn, scratched, or common circulation coins worth just a few cents. The truly valuable ones are the flawless examples, graded mint state 67 or higher, with that telltale double die feature or a brilliant uncirculated finish that survived decades untouched. But that's not the only secret behind the $1,000,000 value. A few 1951D pennies were mistakenly struck on leftover steel planchets, blanks from the 1943 wartime production. These coins have a silvery tone instead of copper and stick to a magnet. Only a handful have ever been confirmed, and their value soars beyond $1,000,000 each. It's one of those minting flukes that seem impossible, yet they exist, quietly waiting in someone's old coffee can or desk drawer. Collectors describe the thrill of the hunt like chasing ghosts. You start scanning every coin, your heart racing each time you see that little D under the date. Could this be the one? Could this be the penny that changes everything? For some, that dream has already come true. One story tells of a teenager in the 1970s who started collecting wheat pennies with his grandfather. Decades later, while sorting through his childhood collection, he found a 1951D in mint condition, one that turned out to be a rare double die. That single coin paid off his house, his debts, and his grandchildren's college tuition. That's the power of one penny. But what makes the 1951D even more fascinating is how ordinary it looks at first glance. There's no flashy marking, no dramatic error visible to the naked eye, unless you know exactly what to look for. Under magnification, the doubling on Lincoln's profile and the letters E and T in Liberty stand out. On the reverse, the wheat stalks may appear slightly distorted or thicker than normal. It's subtle, but unmistakable once you see it. And here's another cliffhanger moment in this coin saga. When word got out that a 1951D penny had sold for nearly $2 million, counterfeiters tried to replicate the error. Dozens of fakes flooded the market. But experts can spot them instantly. The font spacing, the die marks, even the metal composition are giveaways. That's why, if you think you've got one, it's crucial to have it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC before jumping to conclusions. Still, it's hard not to dream. Imagine checking your old penny jar tonight, flipping through a handful of copper coins, and suddenly spotting 1951, with that small D gleaming just below it. Your pulse quickens. You turn it in the light. Could it be? Could this tiny coin, smaller than a button, really be worth more than $1,000,000? Collectors say that's the magic of the Lincoln wheat penny. It keeps hope alive. Even after 70 years, new discoveries are still being made. Coins once thought worthless are now prized rarities. And it all comes down to the details: mint marks, doubling, condition, and those tiny quirks of history that slipped past the eyes of mint workers decades ago. The emotional pull of this story is simple. It reminds us that treasure isn't always buried in mountains or locked in safes. Sometimes, it's jingling right in your pocket. A coin you've seen 100 times might actually be the rarest piece of American history you'll ever touch. So here's how to identify the 1951D penny that could make you rich. First, check for the Denver mint mark, the tiny D below the date. Then, under a magnifying glass, look closely at Lincoln's profile and the letters Liberty. If you notice doubling, that faint shadow or double outline, you may be staring at the $1,000,000 variant. Check the coin's luster too. Sharp edges and a glossy, copper red tone mean it's been well preserved. Finally, test it gently with a magnet. If it sticks, you could have the ultra-rare steel strike error. If any of those signs match your coin, don't clean it, don't polish it, and definitely don't spend it. Get it professionally graded immediately. Because the next coin to break auction records could be yours. A simple 1952D Lincoln wheat penny, a coin most people wouldn't glance at twice, turned out to be one of the most mysterious and valuable finds in American coin history. It started, as these stories often do, with a moment of disbelief. A retired mechanic from Colorado was sorting through an old coffee can filled with loose change he'd been saving since the 1960s. Most of it was ordinary, dull copper, worn edges, nothing special. But then, under the dim light of his garage, one penny caught his eye. It looked different. The color was richer, the strike sharper, and when he looked closer, he saw something even stranger. The D mint mark under the date wasn't quite where it should be. It was tilted, doubled, almost like it had been struck twice. He thought nothing of it at first. But a local coin shop owner nearly dropped his magnifier when he saw it. "Do you have any idea what this is?" he whispered. That moment marked the beginning of a discovery that would shock the coin world. The 1952 Dewey penny, minted in Denver, is not supposed to be rare. Over 746 million were made. Yet, hidden among them are a handful with serious minting errors, off-center strikes, doubled dies, and even rare planchet mistakes that turn everyday coins into million-dollar treasures. But here's the twist: most people who had these coins never realized what they owned. Many were spent, lost, or tossed aside, never knowing they held a piece of minting history. And it's those few survivors, the ones hiding in old jars and attic boxes, that have collectors scrambling to find them today. It's not just age, it's the story written in metal. In the early 1950s, the U.S. Mint was working overtime to meet demand for pennies during the post-war boom. Denver's minting presses were pushed to their limits. And sometimes, mistakes slipped through, the kind that would later make history. One of the most famous errors from that period is the 1952 D doubled die obverse, where Lincoln's profile appears slightly doubled, especially around the eyes, nose, and date. Under magnification, it's unmistakable. Another version shows a repunched mint mark, where the D was accidentally stamped twice in slightly different positions. Those small imperfections are what transform an ordinary coin into a numismatic legend. Dealers were stunned when one of these error coins surfaced at auction. Bidding started modestly, but within minutes, collectors from around the world joined in. Prices climbed: $10,000, $50,000, $200,000. When the final hammer fell, the once overlooked penny had sold for nearly $1 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. After the sale, experts began re-examining other 1952 D coins and realized that several varieties might exist, each with subtle differences in strike, die wear, and planchet composition. Some even suspected a small batch was struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, though none have been confirmed. The mystery deepened, and so did collector obsession. One man's pocket change had become a symbol of hope for every casual coin collector in America. Suddenly, everyone was checking their jars, glove compartments, and dresser drawers, hoping to find a copper miracle of their own. And here's the wild part: there are still hundreds, maybe thousands, of 1952 D pennies out there that haven't been properly examined. Many are sitting unnoticed in family collections, coin albums, or hidden in forgotten boxes. Start with these clues. First, check the condition. Sharp details, minimal scratches, and strong luster dramatically increase value. Next, look closely at the date and the mint mark. Use a magnifying glass or coin loupe. If the D looks slightly doubled, crooked, or repunched, you might have something special. Also, examine Lincoln's profile. Is there doubling around the eyes, mouth, or date? Does the surface look thicker or shadowed in certain spots? Those could be signs of a double die strike. Some 1952 D pennies were struck on planchets that weren't the usual copper alloy. A few experimental pieces were reportedly made from leftover bronze or mixed metal blanks. If your penny looks darker, has a different tone, or feels lighter in weight, it's worth testing, carefully, with professional help. Collectors have been shocked by how high these coins have climbed in recent years. Even average condition examples with visible errors can fetch hundreds to thousands of dollars. But pristine, mint state examples, the kind that look almost new despite being over 70 years old, can reach life-changing values. But what makes these coins so emotionally powerful isn't just the money. It's the idea that something so ordinary, a penny, could hide such extraordinary value. It reminds us that fortune doesn't always shine in gold and diamonds. Sometimes, it hides in the smallest details, waiting for the right eyes to notice. Imagine the thrill of realizing that a penny you've owned for decades could change your life. That's what happened to that Colorado mechanic. The coin he nearly gave away for a coffee refill ended up funding his retirement, all because he took a closer look. This story isn't just about coins, it's about attention, patience, and luck. It's about how one overlooked detail can rewrite destiny. And maybe, just maybe, you've got one of these 1952D treasures hiding in your own collection right now. So, before you spend that next penny, take a closer look. Turn it over. Study the date. Inspect the mint mark. Because the difference between 1 cent and $1 million might be right there, in the palm of your hand. And if you love stories like this, real treasures hidden in plain sight, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community of coin hunters. Who knows? The next $1 million discovery could be yours.